bass.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkinstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funkin' Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkinstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk, shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funkin' Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkinstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. Hey, before we get started with today's show, I just want to draw your attention to new merchandise. Funkin' Stuff and Truth and Rhythm designs are in, and they look pretty darn cool. So show your support, help support the program, and show off some stylish merchandise and apparel. Only at the Funkin' Stuff store. I am pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership Mark Lettieri, an accomplished jazz, funk, fusion instrumentalist, guitar player, composer, and producer. His credits include being a member of the wonderfully inventive Grammy-winning ensemble Snarky Puppy, several outstanding solo releases, and working with a number of other highly regarded players, including members of Wolfpack. In addition, he has recorded with David Crosby, the Jacksons, Ledisi, Keyshia Cole, and Xzibit. His latest outing from earlier this year is a super funky blast titled Deep, the Baritone Sessions Volume 2. Mark, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Outstanding.
Absolutely.
And you're coming to us, obviously, from home base there. Why don't you tell everyone what home base is?
This is Fort Worth, Texas, and this is the quote-unquote home studio. It's just a room with a lot of guitars in it.
Well, it looks awesome. I mean,
Thanks.
You got...
it's a mess. I didn't realize that this particular corner looked as bad as it did until we just put the camera on, so I should probably clean that up a little bit. It's okay.
Yes, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Well, I've been looking forward to having you on the show. I'm a huge fan of a lot of the music that you are as well. And
Thanks,
also,
yeah,
combining that rock edge with funk is, what I love so much. So very cool.
Awesome. Right on.
Yeah. So let's give the folks a little background on how you first, got into guitar and why guitar.
Sure. Started as a kid, about 11, 12, and I think guitar probably found me, maybe. There was one in the house, an old acoustic belonging to my dad, that he would play every now and then. And I'm really thankful that both he and my mom had great taste in music. And so I grew up with the sounds of the Byrds and the Beach Boys and Motown and classic rock and soul and things like that in the house all the time. So I had an ear for music early, but just kind of gravitated towards the guitar because it was there and it was something to do in the afternoon, maybe. And I would just sort of noodle on it and just make noise. And then one day my dad asked if I just wanted some guitar lessons. And I said, yeah, sure. What the heck? And so I started taking lessons from a friend's mom. And right then and there, as soon as I understood how to now create these sounds that sounded cool to me, I was kind of hooked from the beginning and never really didn't want to do it. I don't think I ever looked at it as a hobby necessarily. It was going to be a really, really important part of my life forever.
What was your first guitar?
Besides the one that I learned on that belonged to my folks, the one I actually learned on was an old Yamaha that my mom had. It was like an old nylon string that she bought in college and never learned how to play it. But the first electric guitar I had was a Fender Squier Stratocaster that I had for about a year, and then it was stolen from our house when our house got robbed. So I don't know what happened to it.
A black one?
It was Sunburst, tobacco Sunburst with a rosewood fretboard. Yeah.
And you grew up in Texas, right?
I grew up in Menlo Park in California.
Oh.
Yeah, Bay Area. So I ended up in Texas for college and just stayed. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got plugged into the music scene towards the end of my time at university, and then just didn't feel like moving home, I guess.
Yeah. So, and you ended up taking a lot of formal training on the instrument too, right? And theory and all that?
Kind of, sort of, on and off. Yeah. I had a teacher in high school that was like a private teacher that would come by the house. And he taught me a lot of theory. And I was primarily into rock at the time, but was slowly starting to get into R&B and funk and stuff like that towards the end of my time in high school. And then in college, I took about a year and a half of jazz guitar with the professor at TCU where I went as an elective. So I did it because I liked to do it and I wanted to get some new knowledge, but my degree was actually in marketing and public relations. So I'm kind of like half self-taught, half mentored, I guess I should say, since I don't have a degree in music, but there have been some influential people in my life that have helped me along.
Did that marketing exposure help you when you, decide to make music sort of, your life in terms of the business side?
Yeah, I think it has, in kind of a roundabout way. Sometimes I'll think back to maybe some of the things I learned about brand building and perception and, damage control on the PR side of things to kind of help me on my way. And for a while I thought I wanted to work in advertising and was pretty passionate about it, but the music guitar thing was kind of always over my shoulder telling me like, hey, this is what you're really going to do.
So when you say that your parents, gave you a diverse musical, education, basically, I want to share with viewers, I caught one of your videos online. You have so many videos online. You have a tremendous social media following. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Thank you.
But you have that favorite riffs video in particular, and the selections on that is Bambi by Prince, Who Knows by Hendrix, a King's X track, and All Day Sucker, Stevie Wonder, and Sing a Simple Song by Sly Stone. So that really conveyed to me, the love and appreciation you have for that music and those genres.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a fun little video we put together up for TC Electronic, the effects company, and they just had, they said, hey, pick 5 of your favorite riffs, and gosh, I could have done 50, but those were the 5 that kind of poked into my mind and ones that I had sort of remembered how to play, even though I probably played them all wrong. But yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, those bands or those artists, have really crafted a lot of my sound, certainly from the R&B spectrum, but also on the rock spectrum. I kind of find myself in the middle of both worlds a lot because I grew up with rock and then gravitated towards funk and R&B and jazz, and then went back to rock and then went to gospel, and then kind of now I'm here in my 30s being like, well, I like all of it, so let's just live here in the happy medium and draw from the influences as I see fit when it's time to be creative.
And who are some of your, early and as you got more into the instrument, favorite players and influences?
Sure. I think my first favorite guitar player, like if you were to stop me in a guitar store and be like, "Hey kid, who's number one?" I would have said Jimi Hendrix, for sure. And I guess if I have to, at the end of the day, that would probably still be number one. But let's see. I mean, as I started getting really deep into it and was playing a lot and getting really inspired, I gravitated towards a lot of rock instrumentalists like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and Eric Johnson and Jeff Beck. I was very into Eddie Van Halen. Could never play like him, but I love listening to him. I got real into jazz guys like John Scofield and Pat Martino and George Benson, Charlie Hunter, kind of more fusion players like Larry Carlton, Robin Ford, Wayne Krantz, a lot of gospel cats like Jonathan Dubose, Spanky Alford, a lot of funk session players like Paul Jackson Jr., David Williams, session players like Steve Lukather, for sure. There's just so many. Every time I hear something cool on the guitar, I'm like, I want to be able to do that, sort of, hopefully. And obviously, I can't do it all, but and I listened to a lot of heavy music too, man. I mean, I listened to a lot of, a fair amount of metal and progressive rock and stuff like that. So, if you can make a sound on it on guitar, I've probably checked it out at some point.
It is so tough, Mark, because I was trying to write down, people who I thought maybe were influences for you. And I got into it and I was like, this is endless,
Well, yeah, I know I left off Prince, which is funny because that's usually I always start with Prince, but of course will be one of the top for me too. But yeah, I mean, and I think it just comes from just liking a lot of things, but then also understanding the practicality of being able to maybe play a lot of things at a somewhat convincing level. I mean, if you're a working guitar player, yeah, you can do one thing and make it your thing, or you can do a lot of things. And to me, when I was just getting started, it was great because I liked a lot of things, but it was also great because I could kind of do a lot of things, and so I could take a lot of different gigs. Which, when you're 21 and you have to convince your parents that you're going to be a full-time musician, you need to pay the rent and take care of your bills and all that kind of stuff, and so you got to do all the gigs, no matter what they are. So I was playing. I was playing in top 40 bands, doing weddings and stuff like that. I was playing in country groups. I was playing in hip hop groups. I was, backing up singer-songwriters. I was doing recordings for gospel singers, Yeah, it was like, whatever. I just said yes a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Some of the other ones I had just jotted down, I mean, you named so many of them, but, like Larry Coryell and McLaughlin and Holdsworth and
Holdsworth for sure. I haven't dug too deep into Coryell or McLaughlin, but definitely Alan Holdsworth. I mean, but he's another player kind of like Eddie Van Halen. It's like I could never really do that, but I mean, I can't play like Alan Holdsworth simply because I am physically unable to. My hands are not big enough. But man, what a gift that guy had.
Yes. Yes.
So.
And I don't know if you can see this, but I kind of wore this.
I was trying to see what it said.
Stevie Ray.
Oh yeah. Oh, I definitely had a Stevie phase, man. I mean, we didn't even talk about my blues influences. I mean, Stevie and Buddy Guy and Albert King. Oh my gosh, I love Albert King. Probably one of the reasons why I keep a phase shifter on my board is because of Albert King. So, but I don't play upside down, so he can do a lot of cool stuff that I can't do.
Yeah, and you're in the land of it too now. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So did you feel like you had, sort of a natural facility for the instrument, or was it something you really had to apply yourself to? Because I've had a lot of players on, and one guy who kind of irked me a little bit just because he said it came to him like nothing was Stevie Salas. Was like, cool. Yeah, it just came easy. I didn't try very hard.
Well, he was born funky, I guess. Yeah, sure. I mean, I noticed I had an ability for it. But I had to work hard kind of on the transition from being more of a rock oriented player to someone who could also groove and play rock. It's like learning another language. You know, I in my quest to diversify, there were a lot of hurdles. Some of them I just chose not to really jump over, like becoming a great straight ahead jazz guitar player. That's one of those things where it's like, it just doesn't sound right when I do it. Maybe I could play over these changes kind of, but it's not going to sound like it's not going to be right. But I remember, consciously, I think maybe I was probably 17 or something and got a record by Soul Live, the band Soul Live. Mm-hmm. And just trying to kind of learn those grooves and those Eric Krasno guitar licks and be like, this is coming from a different place. This is not the rock thing. I need to think about pocket in a different way now. I need to think about feel and tone and dynamics and just other things, Same way when I started playing like Steely Dan tunes when I was in high school. I was like, all right, this is different. This is not Ozzy Osbourne, right? I like both of those things, but I'm going to make a conscious effort to understand funk and swing and pocket and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a challenge, I'm still trying to figure it out, probably. I don't think I've mastered it yet, but
yeah, well, and talked about before, but the best players, even lead players, are pretty good at rhythm, I think.
Generally speaking. Yeah, I mean, maybe it just depends on the kind of lead player, but most of the ones that I love are great rhythm guitar players too.
I mean, you can't, if you're right-handed, you can't neglect that right hand.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think a large part of why we love the great guitar solos that we do is not even really the notes themselves. It's the rhythms that the notes are placed in, and the way that the phrasing is and the sort of the whole feel of it all, I think, is what sticks with us a lot of times with great guitar solos. Mm-hmm. And that's rhythm guitar,
Would you categorize yourself as a gearhead where it comes to use a lot of pedals, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I have a lot of cool stuff that I like to use, but I always kind of find myself trying to find myself in everything. So I probably have more than I need. So maybe it's time for a reverb.com sale or something, but it's fun. There might be a new thing that will inspire something from you. And I always say this a lot. It's like you have a sound in your head and you're always kind of chasing the best way to get that out. And sometimes that results in lots of gear.
Lots of toys.
Toys. Yeah. But you know what, man? Like at the end of the day, I hope I can just plug straight into an amp and sound good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What led you to Snarky Puppy? How did that connection happen?
Sure. They were kind of just the cool band in the area. I was working a lot in Dallas, playing with various groups kind of in the R&B scene, and they had started up in Denton, which is about 45 minutes away from Dallas, when they were at school, and we're kind of doing the same thing. The players were coming down, going to the GM sessions and playing with R&B and gospel artists. And so I met them just through the scene, and a friend of mine told me about that they were a band, and I went to go see them a bunch of times and shared bills with them, with different bands that I was in. And it was kind of always one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm glad I caught them before they blew up, Never really thought about being in the band, actually. I had other pursuits that I was interested in bands of my own that I thought were worth a damn, But Michael, the band leader, he and I became good friends, and we were doing a lot of recording work together. And so he just called one day, and because they had some gigs that the other two guitarists, Bob and Chris, couldn't do. And I just happened to be available for a weekend of shows and learned as much of the music as I could and played it well enough to where they were like, hey man, you learned all the tunes and you sound pretty good. Why don't you keep playing with us? So that was it. I mean, it's kind of how like everyone that wasn't like the original 7 or whatever has gotten into the band as almost like a sub that just kept getting invited back. So.
reminds me of the way, P-Funk has been the last several
Sure.
decades, and
Exactly.
that, George, if you can do it, you come in. And I
Hmm.
had a member of the P-Funk All-Stars, Michael Clip Payne, and
Cool.
he was on the show. And when I asked him, who is out there today that's doing something, doing it, and the group that he named was Snarky Puppy,
Oh, that's
you know?
amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Right on.
So, definitely been keeping things interesting and real. Um,
Sure.
what was it like, the collaborative process within that unit?
Well, as far as like the songwriting is concerned, the tunes are written individually. Everyone in the band is welcome to bring in a song, and we'll try all of them. Record as many of them as we can, and just kind of see what works and what works with the contour of the record, and what the overall vision for the production is, and kind of go from there. But everyone has such a unique, not only is a unique compositional voice, but a unique voice on the instrument that I think in the that's kind of maybe where the collaboration comes from, is that someone brings in the tune and then each player sort of interprets the parts kind of in their own language, as it pertains to the song. Of course, we don't totally go off script all the way. We kind of leave that for the live show, but I have a specific sound that sometimes the part will be handed to me because they know that that's the sound that the part needs, so in that respect, everyone's DNA is all over the songs, even if maybe they didn't write the tune themselves.
And of course, the first couple albums were, entirely instrumental and very much. I haven't spoken to Michael, and I don't know, but seemed to me, like Headhunters influence and different jazz fusion influences going on, and very cool stuff. But it certainly has evolved over time.
Yeah, it's very different than it was. Those first three records were, at least before I was in the band, and even just the first three, there's like a very distinct difference. You can tell by the third record, which was Bring Us the Bright. I think it was the third one. You can tell that those guys had been hanging out in Dallas a lot, because stuff just got funkier. There was a little bit more of a groove to stuff, and that was kind of an important change, I think, for a lot of the fellas, like soaking up that R&B Dallas funk thing, because then it wasn't so much about fusion, so I kind of came in at a cool place, because I was digging all that Dallas funk on my own, not in Snarky Puppy, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, you guys I like that stuff. So it worked out.
That's why I was curious, looking at the timeline and when you came in and how things changed. How much, were you responsible for bringing in some funk vibe?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I can't speak on that. Maybe Michael confirm that. But gosh, they around that same time, Bobby Sparks was playing in the band, and Sean Martin and Robert Seawright, and so these like Dallas funk icons, So I maybe I had a small hand in that, but I wouldn't take any credit for it.
What's it like hanging with musicians of that caliber and doing that?
Oh, geez. I think the word is blessed. I'm just lucky, my time feel got infinitely better as soon as I started playing with drummers and from around here. But I've learned so much about music and production and just generally being cool. They're all just cool. So it's been nice. Yeah. And I look at them as mentors. They probably would be like, man, shut up, but having those guys in my life has been, I can't thank them enough. I wouldn't be half the guitar player that I was if it wasn't for playing with those guys.
And it sounds like probably yes, but did you sort of always hope and think you were going to start putting out stuff under your own name? And why did it finally happen?
Sure. Yeah, I think in the back of my mind, and that came from early on listening to those guitar instrumentalists that I liked so much. I was like, man, maybe one day I can do this or something like this. I don't know. I've never really been a singer. I've never really liked that role. Never really liked writing lyrics. And so instrumental music always just felt more natural to me. And Gosh, I think it'll be 10 years since I put out my first record, solo record, which was done really just for fun. I mean, I loved the music and I loved the way it turned out, and I'm proud of it, you know, but I didn't look at it as like, and now begins my solo career. Like, I'm taking off. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, this is fun. I got these tunes I like. Let's make a cool little thing. If people dig it, great. If nobody cares about it, fine. You know, my mom will buy it, right? And honestly, that was kind of my vision with them. I don't know, maybe up until like my third. And this isn't to discount them at all. It's just that like I hadn't quantified the idea of being a solo artist yet until I had built up sort of a catalog and people were saying like, hey, I heard about you, you know, or actually like I heard about Snarky Puppy through you. And I was like, oh, what? No, you know, that's impossible. And so then I had to just be honest with myself and be like, okay, dude, you have a voice on the instrument. You have a voice as a writer. You do a thing. You need to make it. You need to put some effort into it because people are expecting you to do this now, you know? So maybe there was a little bit of a reluctancy there, but I'm comfortable in it now. Because, you know, I mean, thanks to so much of all the other things of what else has happened in my career, I kind of have a way of sharing all this stuff now. And so, you know, it feels good to put out a record and have people know that it's out. But even if nobody knew, I would still be doing it because I like to do it. It's just you end up with songs in your brain and you got to get them out. Otherwise it starts to get unhealthy and uncomfortable. So I just, every 2 years I catalog them.
You purge it every time.
I guess it's about every 2 years, maybe a year and a half, 3 years. I don't know. So
I want to mention so viewers and listeners know that first one was called Nose in 2011. Mm-hmm. And I just want to mention a few highlights for me. Nose was like a real funky kind of Red Hot Chili Peppers-ish kind of vibe. And
maybe so.
Girlman, you know, you mentioned Jeff Beck. I definitely felt some of that influence there. And Slide Rule is a real nice jam.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a fun record. You know, I mean, I think going back, would I have done different things like production wise or whatever? Yeah, maybe because I was learning. But the tunes, like I still play those songs on gigs and people are like, what was that? And I was like, well, it's 10 years old. You know? So I feel like the songs really kind of had a vibe and have held up, you know?
Do you ever go to play like a particular track and you realize you're playing another one, or do you ever mix them up at all?
No, but I definitely go back to some of that stuff, at least from the first record, and be like, wow, I was kind of a different guitar player. There's the first, I think it's the first and second track on that record, Big Duck. It's the first track. Okay. That's like a part of my playing that I haven't focused on in a long time. That kind of like syncopated, distorted, fusion-y funk thing. I know it sounds funny because people probably hear it, they're like, that's exactly what you sound like. But to me, there's a physicality in that song that I don't know if I have anymore or I just haven't really focused on. And so we haven't played it in a long time, and I should probably fix that because it's a cool track.
Maybe this will lead to that.
There you go. Yeah.
And the second one, Future Fun, was out in 2013. Mm-hmm. Really like Catboy.
Thanks, man.
And Future Fun, the title track, a little rockier. That was probably one of your earliest rocky type tracks.
Kind of had pop rock with changes.
Exactly. Stinger, a little of that blues influence on that one.
Thanks.
And Slugbug made me think of, we didn't mention him, but if you had some Billy Gibbons influence as well.
Yeah, we didn't mention ZZ Top, but shoot, yeah. I love ZZ Top, man. That's in there, you know. Slugbug kind of, I guess if I think about it, maybe was like the first baritone funk song in a sense, because the groove is sort of a bit of a play on like DC Go-Go beat a little bit. It's not all the way there, but that was kind of what we wanted to have an essence of there, a rare essence to make a go-go pun. But is that the name of the band? That was the name of the band, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, I'll make sure I didn't mess that up on a joke because that'd be really bad. And then the guitar is tuned down to B, which is a standard baritone tuning. I just didn't use a baritone guitar. So, but again, that's a tune that's, I don't know, 2013 that we still play live. Now it's got an extended drum solo, and that's a kind of a crowd favorite. People actually yell at me to play that. So if I don't have a baritone, it's kind of unfortunate because I tell them that I can't play it. But
now explain for those who don't know what a baritone guitar is and how it differs.
Yeah. It's tuned either a fourth or a fifth below standard guitar tuning. So it's not as low as a bass, but it's like a maybe like tenor range, I guess you call it. And I don't want to generalize them, but primarily you may have heard of them in country music or soundtracks. It's kind of a textural instrument. At least in my experience, I hadn't heard it quite out in the forefront, really. But I chose to write funk groove music on it because I thought with the baritone, the way it's tuned, you get a little bit of a thud and bottom of a bass guitar, but you still get that snap and crack of a funky electric standard guitar. And so it made sense to me for it to be a groove instrument.
Have you got any feedback where you felt like you've opened up some funk enthusiasts, ears and eyes, and they're like, what is that? Whoa,
Yeah. No, I think I have. If social media is any indication, a lot of people are picking up baritone guitars and playing funk grooves. And I know that because they hashtag my name. So I'm able to see it. It's kind of, oh, look what I don't want to take credit for it, but it seems that this thing has kind of occurred. I mean, I don't know if it's this massive wave of baritone funk, but people are getting hip to it, and I am getting called to do that on people's records now. Hey, do you think you could throw a baritone, like kind of funky baritone part on there? I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. So yeah, it's cool. It's kind of cool to see how it's kind of expanded.
And how does the sound of that differ from the frequencies of like a piccolo bass?
I'm actually not sure. I don't know if I've played a piccolo bass. They might around be in the same register, but I think a lot of it has to do with the pickups and the electronics. Guitar pickups, I think, are voiced differently than bass pickups, and so you get, even if it might be in the same tuning range, you get a different frequency coming through. Baritone guitars have a kind of a specific top end, high mid growl that you don't really get with any kind of bass guitar. But yeah, I should probably pick up a piccolo and see what I sound like on one.
Stanley Clarke leaps to mind as
there you go. All right,
playing that one. So yeah, that third record felt like that was your first full-fledged album. The other two seemed a little more EP-ish, and then you really made like a full statement with Spark and Echo.
Right. Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, so I look at that as kind of like the full statement. Like, okay, I think I'm a solo artist now. Here you go. I love that record. I'm really proud of that record. I think it turned out really nice.
Yeah, I really like Little Minx, which rocks quite nicely. And
another one I don't play live enough. Gosh, what's wrong with me? It's in a weird tuning, so that's my excuse for that one.
Yeah, more fusion-y on this one than the other two, I think, and more soloing, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably so, maybe so, yeah.
If maybe feeling your oats a little more on this one.
Sure.
And you did the cover tune. How'd you decide on that track?
I've always loved that song. It's always been one of my favorite songs. I remember that as a kid, and so we had been playing it live as a trio, really, sometimes with a keyboard. But when we got into the studio, I had actually played it one time with a friend who played pedal steel. We were in Atlanta, I think, on tour, and I just had him come sit, and I was like, hey, do you want to try this on pedal steel? And I just remember thinking, like, wow, this was kind of a cool vibe. So when it came time to record that record, that tune was actually kind of an afterthought. We actually just sort of had some leftover studio time. And I was like, you guys want to do Everybody Wants to Rule the World? And the guys were like, yeah, sure. So we just got in there and recorded it as a trio. And then I brought in Milo Deering to do the steel and the fiddle and the accoutrements. And so, yeah, I thought it was cool. I mean, I didn't want to reimagine the whole song. Like, it just felt natural to kind of play it kind of up the middle, but just in it with a slightly different accent, Texas accent.
And Mark, what do you feel like you took from that project, doing this more full fleshed out piece of work? And how did that take you forward to your, successive solo work? And also what did it bring to, what you were now doing with other groups like Snarky Puppy?
That's a good question. I definitely learned a lot from Spark and Echo from a production standpoint, like how instruments need to fit in a mix and how much is too much, and do we need all these guitar parts, things like that, and really kind of learning how to look at a composition and the arrangement of that composition so that the arrangement really fits what's going on and kind of the intent of the tune. And so I think that helped me out just to be a better self-producer and a better session player, really. I treat all my records almost like I'm doing sessions for other people in a strange way, because I just want the composition and the tune and the arrangement to be as cool as it can be. And that might mean it needs some fancy guitar stuff. It might mean that it doesn't. And that's kind of exactly the way I would approach someone else's tune. It's like, if you need fireworks, I will give them to you. But if the song doesn't need it, then we don't need to do it. And so it was kind of an exercise in restraint and just kind of like learning how to write and produce the best kind of songs that I could, and use the guitar to get that point across rather than it being about the guitar. So, but there's cool guitar stuff on there too, if you're into that.
No doubt. But more of a means to an end than the thing.
Yeah, because I like songs and I love guitar, but my influences are not just guitar players. They're other instrumentalists, or they're bands, or they're songwriters. I mean, Jackson Browne is one of my favorite artists, and he's a songwriter, right? So I'm always interested in just having a cool composition.
I'm looking at where you went from there, Mark, and was it Things of That Nature or the volume 1 of the bass?
Well, yeah, it was the volume 1 of the Baritone thing, which it wasn't called volume 1, but I'm referring to it as that now because I did a volume 2 and I didn't know what else to call volume 2. So the Baritone thing was like a kind of just another lane, another avenue for me that I travel in at times. And that came from discovering the baritone guitar as a funk instrument and making these little like social media videos. I had this thing called Baritone Funk Thursday, which like every Thursday for several weeks I would post up some new little micro jam 1 minute 30-second baritone tune that I would write and film and program beats to and everything. And it kind of became the social media thing that people were getting really excited about and kind of went viral, and then people just started asking for an album. And I hadn't, again, this is my reluctancy to be a solo artist, I guess. I had never really thought about it as an album. I was like, oh, this is just some, Instagram joke for everybody. And I was like, wait a minute, no, it's not. This is serious. This is cool. You should do it, you idiot. And so I put that record together and I produced it all here at the home studio and emailed out a couple parts and did a drum session, and that became volume 1. And immediately everyone was like, where is volume 2? And I was like, all right, so this is a thing now. So now I have my 2 lanes that I get in my car as a composer, and I decide to drive in the baritone funk lane, or I decide to drive in the Things of That Nature, Spark and Echo, traditional instrumental guitar lane. So right now I'm kind of in the baritone lane, but if you come see me live, it's a lot of swerving back and forth between the two. A lot of changing of lanes.
That explains it. Okay.
Yeah.
And where did it come from, that you have these mostly one-word title songs and, how do you come up with it?
So I had this idea as soon as I decided I was going to make an album. I was going to call it Deep because I just thought it was a cool one, solid thing. Kind of describes the feeling of the baritone guitar and the feeling of the music, a lot of bottom end, it's deep. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can take the theme a little further and name it after something at the bottom of the ocean, deep sea. Let's see, how about species of fish? Because I always thought those names were cool. So I I got on the Googles and found all the cool names and was like, this fish kind of reminds me of this tune. This name kind of reminds me of this tune. And I just started kind of pairing them up. And for volume 2, it's kind of the same thing. A friend suggested I should do deep space. And I was like, all right, great. So I started getting on the Google and finding names of celestial phenomena and exploding stars and different other kinds of stuff like that to kind of make those tunes happen. I don't know what I'm going to do for volume 3. The joke is that it's going to be deep feelings. But I don't think anybody's going to want to listen to that. It won't be very fun.
That doesn't sound funky. No.
Pass.
I thought maybe you're hanging out at the Gulf down there, just staring at the sky, and you got both deeps right there.
Yep.
I don't know if it occurred to you, but it occurred to me that it's kind of interesting that these are works of funk primarily, and the ocean and the space themes are similar to Parliament with Motor Booty Affair and the Mothership Connection, which is on the wall back there. So I
noticed all the stuff back there.
So also deep space and deep ocean for those.
All right. Cool. Anytime I can be equated to George is good. So that works for me.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.